Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so we'd like to start on time around here. And before we get to David and the main event, which is supply chain, let's go ahead and do like we usually do and ask how last week's session went. And if you have any questions left over from financials, or if you have any questions left for your pitch decks. We do have pitch practice on Thursday, so you guys get to have a little FaceTime before you do it on Friday or Saturday. So do we have somebody in the room, Shauna, who would like to share any insights they gained from last session? Shauna. Are you guys hearing me?
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Sorry, Maggie. Hold on. I'm handing it back. Here you go.
No problem. I got some good photography done over the weekend. My samples came, all 3 of them, which was wonderful.
Oh, cool.
As expected, looked exactly as I thought they would. One of them's even better than like I've ever seen before, which is amazing. During the photography downtown, a couple random like people from shops come out and just like flood up to me and be like, oh, well, God, what are these? I have to try them. And one of the guys was the owner of the skateboard shop. So that started a conversation. Feeling pretty positive about all that. They just call to people. It's interesting, but that's me. I don't want to go too far. Anybody else?
Thank you.
We got one more person in the room, Maggie.
Okay, then we'll go to one online.
I have a concern.
Hi, everybody. This is Sadia. I got exciting news today. I got a price from some software developers to build my MVP. So we had a bunch of meetings about what is the minimum to make the thing work. And I got the price and they're super excited. And it's enough to give like the look and the feel and to actually work. So it's getting there. Thank you, Startup Envy.
That's fantastic, Sadia. Okay, Yvonne, you had a question.
No, I had a concern
Oh,
because
yes.
the business ideas that I have are really mostly ideas. I have not been able to figure out how to move them from being an idea to a reality. I know that one of it is money, but the rest of it is bigger than money. So it's been challenging for me to come up with my own presentations because I'm not even sure what I'm doing. So that's why I say it's a concern. I don't know. And I was trying to meet the coach that we have for some one-on-one consultation, maybe.
Did you ask him or her?
No, because when I asked for the contact, they didn't give me. They said they were available Thursday, and I wasn't sure what that meant because I've only been online.
Oh, you've only been online. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just you can write to me. I'll give you some time so we could try to brainstorm on that.
All right.
Really,
Thank
since you're
you.
going to be spending a lot of time in whatever business you decide, you have to have some passion for it. You're going to be committing to it. So you want to make sure it's something that you can commit to, that you want to commit to, because you're going to lose sleep over it. So you want to be sure it's something that you're passionate about. If you haven't found a passionate idea yet, then don't start a business.
Okay, so how do I reach out to you so we can brainstorm some
Oh,
of the things?
yes, I am here, Maggie at startupnv.org. And that's in the chat now. Yes, Jude, traction slide is optional. What else? I will be recording my pitch. No problem, Letitia. All
I'm
right.
sorry. I didn't get to finish. I hit the enter button too quick. So I will be recording it and sending it in. Where should I send it to? And when is the last day that we have to send it? Because I have a business partner who is not in town right now.
It is, you're going to send it to Andrew. And you have until next Friday or Saturday, the 21st.
The 21st. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are also having a marketing event at the East Library on the 21st. So I don't know if anyone wants to partake. It's for startups and also people that are in business. I have a lot of different people who will be there. So I'll be in there Thursday to give out some free tickets to everybody in the class. Or if anyone is interested in setting up a booth, I am giving those up to start off for free.
Excellent. Put the details in the chat so that Andrew can read it at the end of the session today.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay. And then, yeah, Andrew, we could add that to Disco as well. All right, Wendy, share more information on the financials. What in particular are you after?
Hi, I just wasn't clear on what we needed to include. I read the whole deck information and the slides, and
Oh,
I don't think we needed to include like our own personal business financials, right?
oh, no, you don't. That's not necessary for this pitch at all. We just covered financials in our session last week. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. All righty, without further ado, then we're going to jump into our supply chain presentation from David Yokin. Last cohort, everybody knew who David was because he was a mentor too. So he was there every day. This time he was a little too busy to do that part. So David, why don't you give him a background on your background?
Absolutely. So first, I want to just talk about what I'll be talking about today. And the first topic there is introduction, and I'll share a little bit about myself. I'm going to take you through what is a supply chain. This is probably a topic that a lot of you have heard about, but don't really know what it means or what it can mean for your business. We'll talk about why should we care and what this means. And then I'll go pretty in depth with this 5-step model: plan, source, make, fulfill, retain, and give you some tips and tricks about how to think about your supply chain, no matter what kind of business you're in, and how that can improve your performance. I'll try to keep it relatively quick and leave some room for questions at the end, but feel free to jump in with questions in the chat as we go. So, quick introduction about myself. I currently am a management consultant. I do a variety of different types of projects, including supply chain, digital strategy, growth strategy, and AI-driven decision making. I'm currently in Dallas for a digital strategy for an industrial products company. But over the course of my time in my career, I've worked across a variety of industries and doing a whole bunch of different stuff. So supply chain is a real passion area of mine, and I think it's something that we all can get a little bit more familiar with. I also do have startup experience. So prior to getting back into consulting, I built a space-based AI software startup in Central Virginia that did geospatial intelligence for sustainability. In that role, I led business development, product strategy, and a whole bunch of other functions as we scaled that company from zero to exit. So I've seen a variety of different companies, worked across a variety of different domains, and happy to be here. I'm really passionate about the Las Vegas startup ecosystem. I'm from Vegas, went to Bonanza High School, and I've been getting more involved with Maggie and Startup NV over the past couple of years, and really happy to give back. So before, during, or after this presentation, feel free to reach out to me. I'm here to help. So getting into it, what is a supply chain? So a lot of people will think about this in terms of the diagram at the right. It's movement of goods from warehouses to consumers. It's the management of product flow from suppliers to warehouses and everything in between. But I find it helpful to think about it as from a more organic perspective. And we all have a circulatory system. We all have a heart and lungs and blood. And when you think about a supply chain, think about it as delivery of value from here to there. It's not just sequences and processes. It's an organic system of delivering whatever it is that your business delivers. In the case of the heart and the lungs, it's oxygen to the organs. In the case of the diagram at the right, it was pharmaceutical distribution. But these aren't dead, static systems. This is the backbone of your business. This is the lifeblood of what you're doing, and it's an organic flow. So getting into the model that we're going to use here, we're borrowing from the APIX supply chain operations reference model. This is widely used in industry and academia. For those who aren't familiar, operations research is a field unto itself. There are many PhDs that spend their whole lives just researching these types of models. I've chosen this one because it's simple but comprehensive, and it illustrates each step of the process, I think, quite nicely. So I'll walk you through it here, and then we'll get in detail on each step. First is plan. So figuring out what you're going to sell and how much. In the case of all of you, you're probably in the process of designing, right? You're not quite to the point of forecasting, but you're figuring out what it is you're going to sell. What is that product offering? And that's part of your supply chain as well. Figuring out that upfront piece will enable the downstream. Once you plan what you're going to sell, you source it. It's obtaining materials from suppliers to make your product. And then, of course, make. So this is, broadly speaking, creating value from raw materials. This can be manufacturing, this can be writing code, this can be any activity in your business that is generating value to the end consumer. From there, you fulfill. And this should bring to mind Amazon warehouses and Uber Eats drivers. This is where you're delivering value to customers effectively. This includes your inventory planning, as well as any logistics associated with getting that final product to consumers. And finally, the step that most people don't think about is retain. So this is managing returns, reverse logistics, customer success in a digital context. It's keeping those customers happy so that you're maximizing the lifetime value that you get from them. So bringing it back to this oxygenation example and trying to make it feel a little bit more organic. So let's talk about what it means for the heart and lungs to pump and what that means in the context of a supply chain. So first is your planning step. We've all had a situation where we have to take a deep breath, or maybe we're breathing really shallow. Those are forecasting decisions made by your brain. This is demand planning. This is your brain understanding how much of that raw material do I have to bring in. Your lungs are sourcing. Your lungs are bringing in the oxygen from the material, the supplier, right, the air around you, into the system. From there, you're making, meaning that you're binding the oxygen to the red blood cells. You're creating value for that end product, for that end customer. Fulfilling in this case would be your heart pumps and blood delivers oxygen to your organs. Your organs use that oxygen and return it. So or they return CO2 rather. So the CO2 is coming back to the lungs, and hopefully the organs are remaining happy customers with high lifetime value. So what does this mean for businesses? A lot of people think about supply chain as physical products. You buy something on Amazon and it shows up at your door. And that is true. That is a main usage of supply chain, but it's also true for services and digital. So I want to step through this same model, talking about each of these types of businesses, because some of you out there might be doing one of these three. In the case of a physical product, so say you have a fudge company, your first step is figuring out how much fudge am I going to sell? Is it peanut butter, white chocolate, dark chocolate pistachio? And you're forecasting that. You're understanding how much of that I'm going to sell to which customers at which time. And you're sourcing it. You're going out to the chocolate suppliers, you're buying the ingredients, you're bringing them in-house, and then you're making it. You're putting all that together and creating your finished product. Then you fulfill, meaning you ship out the product to customers. Maybe you hand deliver it. Maybe you have a partnership with UPS. However you get it there, that's a critical step. And then, of course, retain. In a physical products business, this is often about managing returns, but don't sleep on the customer service aspect of retain. That's where you win customers, and that's how you create repeat business. In a services context, a lot of you out there are probably creating services businesses where you'll be going in and doing something for a client, but not delivering a physical product. You still have a supply chain. Your planning step is going to be your capacity. How many people do I have on staff? What are their skill sets? How am I allocating those resources? Your sourcing is hiring, or however you choose to do that. It's onboarding the people that are going to be delivering those services. In this context, make is really the training and the building of the capacity that you have to offer. Fulfilling is your delivering of the service, and retaining is addressing complaints. And then, of course, digital businesses. I've worked in a software company. I've dealt in non-physical products, and often people think of this as a very ambiguous product and not quite as linear as a physical supply chain, but it does follow a similar pattern. So here your planning step is going to be road mapping. It's laying out, what are we building in the next 3 to 6 months? What are the features that our customers need? And how do we develop those proactively? You're sourcing the talent to develop those, whether you're in-source with engineers in-house or you're working with an outsourced firm. You're creating that capacity within the business to build the product, which in this case means writing software. It means creating that code, creating the value in the business. Fulfilling, of course, is shipping product so that it's live to customers. Different sense, of course, than the physical shipment of product, but similar principles. And then retain. There's a term out there, customer success in the software world. This is where you're working with customers day to day, making sure they're getting the most out of your business, and ensuring that they stick with you rather than competitors. So I want to pause for a second. I've thrown a lot of information out there, and I wanted to ask the group either come off mute or throw it in the chat. How does supply chain management impact your business? How is this something that you've ever thought of before? Is it something that you're concerned about? Where does supply chain intersect what you do?
Anybody in the room? Nope. Hey. Oh, hold on. We have someone in the room that would like to share.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sadia, and I think a lot of people don't put a lot of mental energy into supply chain, but if you don't build a product and if you can't get it to customers, you don't have a business. Just like
Exactly.
with no oxygen, you can't live. So supply chain is as important as your product because you got to get it from point A to point B.
I love that, Sadia. Yeah, thank you. That's exactly right. Without oxygen, the organs fail, right? Adil said, I would think it would allow you to respond to supply and demand. And that's exactly right. Planning and forecasting, I think, is one of the most interesting areas of supply chain. And it's something that successful companies do well and unsuccessful companies don't. And being able to understand where and when you need to have product is critical to closing sales. Marcus says, as a food processor, my supply chain is in two parts, upstream and downstream. Absolutely. And that is true of every business. Everyone sits somewhere in a value chain. And you can think of it also as an ecosystem. We use these linear models to make it intelligible to think about, but in reality, it's not always linear. And your supplier, as a food processor, your upstream suppliers probably have their own upstream suppliers. And the downstream suppliers that you sell to, maybe it's selling to end customers, but maybe they have channel partners or others downstream. So it's a complex web as you start to get into it. And the more that you understand your piece and how that is organized within your own business, the more effective you can serve that whole ecosystem. Thanks so much for that input. So why should we care? And I have two views of this. One of these is a little bit more practical, and that's this. So supply chain management, SCM, sits between faster, simpler, and cost-effective. This is a golden triangle of successful businesses. Being able to operate more efficiently means that you're getting product from raw material to end customer quicker, less hassle, less headaches, less unnecessary steps, and it usually costs less. Usually the more efficient that you can organize your supply chain, the less you have to pay in cost of goods sold and in inventory. And on that note, moving from practically speaking to financially speaking. And I know we've just covered this, so I won't drain what net income and cost of goods sold are. But I do want you to think about what supply chain means in this context. So on the income statement side, supply chain means moving your cost of goods sold to your net income. It means that you're spending less on materials, less on overhead usually, and more flowing through to the bottom line, which is what we all care about. And on the balance sheet, everyone hopefully is familiar with assets equal equity plus liabilities. Your asset stack is going to be obviously your equipment and then accounts receivable, your inventories and cash on hand, balances out against your equity, meaning your retained earnings and your invested capital, and then your payables and your debt. So supply chain works on the asset side to move your inventories into cash and receivables, meaning that you're spending less to just keep product on the shelf that nobody wants to buy, and you're flowing more through into cash and into retained earnings, which is what we want to grow as a business. So now I'm going to jump into a deep dive into each of these 5 steps. Again, feel free to ping questions as we go, and we'll have some time at the end. But first of all, talking about planning. As I mentioned, planning is one of my favorite areas of supply chain. I think it's a fascinating space, and there's all sorts of super advanced modeling going on right now. There's a lot of AI in demand planning, and there's a lot of advanced ways to do this. But as you're just starting a business, focus on the fundamentals. And that means market research first. Who is your customer? What do they want? What are they going to buy? How do they usually buy? And from that, you can build a basic demand forecast. I'll walk you through an example of that in a minute here. You're also thinking about resource planning. Maybe it's a services business or a digital business where you need to plan your developers or your staff, figure out who's going to deliver that product. Supply chain, so are you making to order? Are you making to stock? What's your plan to hit customer demand? And how are you being proactive in thinking about this? A lot of this stuff is often reactive, where business owners just catch the wave and often end up left behind because they haven't really been proactive in thinking about how am I going to build this supply chain. So I'd encourage all of you to be thinking about your own business and how you're delivering value through it. Risk management is always a concern. What could go wrong? What are my contingency plans? And then how do I measure it? Maggie says all the time, manage what you measure. And if you don't, Maggie, I think you should. Figuring out what is important in the business, setting those KPIs, and being able to understand what moves the needle in terms of the bottom line. And the better metrics you can get in place at the front end of your planning process, the easier it's going to be to manage that whole supply chain. So key takeaways on planning. You'll notice that in the arrow diagram at the left, not all of the arrows hit the mark, right? And that's okay. You're focused on precision, not necessarily absolute accuracy. As you think about these steps, first, again, decide what to sell. What is my offering? Design it, figure out how you're going to go to market, and then start with a guess. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I think I'm going to sell 10 units of peanut butter chocolate fudge this month. You need a guess to go on, and that'll improve over time. The guess becomes your forecast, probably a moving average, which I'll show you here, and then track what you sell. It's surprising how many businesses out there don't have a good sense of what it is that's selling, when and where. Have an awareness of that and understand what's working, and then measure variability and accuracy. And this becomes a cycle, right? Successful organizations with big supply chain planning teams have a monthly cadence where they review each of these steps: demand planning, supply chain planning, financial planning, and then bring it all together in production plan and repeat. You can have a similar process in your business. So this is nerding out a little bit, and I hope people's eyes don't glaze over with the spreadsheets on the screen, but I wanted to give you an example of what it means to create a forecast. And this is a critical step, knowing what your forecast is for each of your SKUs or stock keeping units, meaning the unique items that you sell. So that could be peanut butter fudge versus white chocolate pistachio. You need to have an idea of what you're going to sell so you can order materials and plan for those sales. So say month 1, you're basically just guessing, and say you guess it's 15 units for each SKU in that month. You'll have an understanding of what that actually is. So say we guessed 15 and it came in at 10, 20, and 4. Fine. In month 2, you should probably just assume that month 1 is representative of your forecast. And then in month 3, you average those previous 2. And this becomes the basis for the forecast going forward. It's called a 3-month rolling average. And it's not a perfect method. As I mentioned, this is a science and an art, and it's something that tons of PhD operations researchers spend their careers doing. But for what you're doing, a 3-month rolling average is probably appropriate. So what does that mean? It means in month 4, you take an average of month 1, 2, and 3. And in month 5, you take an average of month 2, 3, and 4. So n minus 3, minus 2, minus 1. And will this be perfect? No. Will it give you enough to plan your business around? Absolutely. And you want to measure your forecast accuracy. So here you can see SKU A has a forecast accuracy of about 83%. So if you look at the forecast, 15, 10, 13, 12, 10, 10, and the actuals 10, 15, 10, 5, 15, 12. Not bad, right? In forecasting land, anything above 80% is really good. There are companies out there that can hit in the 90s, but for what you're doing, 80% will allow you to be efficient with inventory and it'll allow you to plan your business effectively. SKU C probably needs a little bit of attention. And the reason for that, without getting into too much math here around coefficient of variation, is that SKU C is highly variable. It's going from 5 one month to 30 the next month, 5, 30. And as a result, the coefficient of variation, which is just dividing the standard deviation by the average, means that you're almost up to 1. And really anything over 1 means that your standard deviation is more than your average, which means that you're not really going to predict it. And in these cases, you want to have some manual interventions to understand, how can I talk to customers better? How can I improve my information so that my forecast gets a little better? And feel free to adjust the 3-month rolling average. It's a starting point, but in a mature organization, these starting points are always augmented with additional information, usually from sales teams, people talking to customers around expectations for that month. So if you have a SKU C, something that's highly variable, improve your information. Hopefully everything turns out like SKU B at 0.12 CV, and you're able to perfectly predict what you're going to sell that month. If anyone wants to go deeper, I have a link here to ABC XYZ analysis, which is a whole planning system around your variability and the volatility that you're experiencing in the business. Fascinating topic, and happy to chat offline more if anyone's interested. Step 2, sourcing. So as you're getting a business set up, you're going to want to identify your suppliers. Who are the people that I'm going to do business with? How do I vet them? Whether that's references, looking up their Better Business Bureau ratings, understanding who is a reputable partner. Getting agreements established. So don't just think that you can just have some handshake agreement and you'll be good. Try to get something in writing. Even if it's just confirmation in email, you're going to want to track back to that at some point. Step 3, plan and manage those supplier relationships. Talk to your suppliers. Let them know where you're at with the business, what you're looking at in 3 months. Help them help you. Receive, inspect, and validate inputs. Should go without saying, but don't make your final product with an input that's not good. It will result in a bad customer outcome. And then optimize and scale your sourcing strategy. Figuring out which suppliers can scale with you, which can't, and how are you going to accomplish the scale that you're aiming towards. Key takeaways. So we have an image here on the left of a lemon being squeezed. And a lot of the time that's how people think about procurement. It's, how do I get that extra penny off of the unit cost? I would encourage you instead to think about suppliers as the tributaries to your business's river. I think Sadia brought up earlier the notion of an ecosystem and the idea that there's upstream and there's downstream. Think about how your suppliers are flowing into you and what that means for your river. So start small, do test purchases, understand their capabilities, but think long-term. Don't just partner with a supplier that's not going to be able to match the scale that you want to be at in a month or 2. Find partners that are going to enable you to find that success. Have redundant suppliers. This is something that you don't need right when you start, but as you start to scale, things will go wrong. Suppliers will be out of inventory. You want to have backups and build relationships with all of them. Don't just think of this as, I can squeeze as much out of this supplier as I can. negotiate on more than just price, get better terms, get favorable product offerings, and be sure that you continue to look at this as a relationships business, because that's where you're all in. On to make. So how are you going to do it? How are you going to make that product? Whether that's consumer good or art or software, what's the process by which I develop the value that I ship to customers? And then you develop and execute the offering. You actually make the stuff, you write the code, you train the service workers, actually doing the making. Over time, you're going to want to be able to optimize the efficiency of those processes. You're going to need to step into those processes and see, where am I being efficient? Where am I not? Where can I save time? Where can I be more effective? Continuously look at that. There's a whole operations discipline called Lean Six Sigma, which is essentially measuring each process step and managing them down to be the most effective as possible. And really all it boils down to is measure and manage, repeat. Quality control is critical, whether it's, again, software code or fudge. You're going to be continuously looking at, am I delivering the best product to your customer, which allows you to refine and scale. Key takeaways: make means create value. So lots of different businesses in the room, lots of different product offerings, service offerings. Whether you're training models, you're assembling products, you're synthesizing research, whatever it is, make sure that you create value at each step. Don't just have some stuff that you do that doesn't really add value to the end customer, but you think it's cool. Figure out how to cut that out. Validate those things with customers. 2 is that quality counts. Quality is something that's often overlooked, and it's something that ruins customer relationships. The last thing that you want is your customer to get a product that isn't up to the standard that you expect or they expect, and then they stop coming back to your business. The first sale is always the hardest to win, right? So start with a metric. In manufacturing, we talk about first pass yield, scrap rate, OEE. But you could even use net promoter score or customer satisfaction as your quality metric, depending on the type of business you're in. And then, of course, figuring out whether you're make to stock or make to order. You're probably all making to order to start, but as you start thinking about inventory, you want to be deliberate about how we're making to stock, and then having a short cycle time of customer feedback, cycling in their understanding as part of your production process. On to fulfill. So first step in fulfill is taking orders. And whether that's a landing page that you set up, it's easier than ever to conduct e-commerce. And there's lots of good tools out there for accepting orders and payments online, some that you can set up for free. Figure out what that is and make that as seamless as possible. From there, planning and optimizing your logistics. How is this product actually going to get to customers? How am I going to manage inventory? What is the plan for managing that supply flow? Inventory is a key domain for supply chain management. It's an area where a lot of small businesses die because they make too much of the wrong product. They overorder on an inventory purchase that they don't end up selling. So you want to unite your planning and fulfillment to make sure that what you stock and what you offer is what customers want in reasonably similar quantities to what they're demanding. Of course, execute and deliver, hand delivering, partnering, shipping code, whatever it might be, and then measuring delivery performance. On time in full is a very common way to measure things. So this is not just, did the order get there? It means, of the 8 items that the customer ordered, were all 8 there? And if not, it's a 0. So being strict on this is pretty important. It won't hurt you to measure OTIF versus just fill rate. So think about being a little bit stringent as you measure your own performance.
How come I can't?
Go ahead.
Jenna, did you have a question?
False alarm, I think.
No worries. So key takeaways for fulfillment. The pictures on the left are from an actual engagement that I did last year with a big national pharmaceutical distributor, actually the company that distributed most of the COVID vaccines. And they have all sorts of stuff in their warehouses. All of these blue crates were just gloves. It was excess inventory dating back to COVID, where they had to have rows on pallets of sterile gloves. So during that engagement, we went in and actually picked orders off the shelves. This is the back of my head here. Picked orders off the shelves, assessed their processes and planning, and helped them optimize this network at the bottom. And this is another area where I want to get into a little bit of math, but hopefully it's not too overwhelming. So when you think about the key steps for fulfillment, the first is knowing what you have or are buying. So that'll be your in-stock items here. Say you have 100 of SKU A, 20 of SKU B, and 10 of SKU C. The second step is to measure that inventory in days. And if you do this second step, you'll be ahead of probably 80% of the small businesses out there. And all that it means is that you divide your inventory by the demand for that day. Simple, but powerful. And it gives you this inventory days on hand. So you can know that SKU A, okay, I have 10 days worth of inventory. SKU B, 4. SKU C, 5. Which comes in very handy when you start to plan your lead time. And this is getting into a little bit of the supply chain nerdery around how do I set my reorder points? How do I know which of what I need to buy? And it's through this inventory days on hand. So SKU A, I have 10 days on hand. It only takes me 2 days to get more of the product and make it. Okay, I'm good. SKU B, probably good for now. But SKU C, I only have 5 days on hand and it's going to take me 10 days to get more. So I should order more of SKU C. Point 4 is more of a philosophical point than anything, but at this stage in your business, excess inventory is better than out of stock. You don't want to let it get out of hand, and you don't want to be stocking a bunch of product that you're never going to sell. But missing a sale means missing a customer relationship. So don't be afraid to have a little bit of a buffer in the business and invest a little bit of working capital into having what people want. And then, of course, ship and deliver what's demanded. So last section here, and I think this is one of the most important parts of the supply chain and something that isn't often thought about when you think about supply chain, and that's retainment. So step 1 is clear return and support policies. Help customers understand if they need to return something, how do I get it back to you? How does that work? Don't be opaque. Don't try to hide. Be honest, and customers will appreciate that. Execute those reverse logistics. So that means when somebody ships a product back to you, managing the payment for that, managing all the shipment and time, and then getting them the item that they need. Track and manage service requests. So don't just let this flounder or be something that's a one-off thing. Whether you're using some kind of CRM or you're still tracking it on a spreadsheet, whatever your process is, don't lose track of this because it's something that customers care about. Analyze trends and prevent issues, self-explanatory, and then customer success and enablement. It's something that's often brought up in the context of digital companies or software companies, where they are working with customers day in, day out, making sure that they're getting the best out of the software. And it's something that has a pretty significant return. So invest in great customer service. Don't let this be somewhere where you skimp. Don't let it be something that you don't think you have to do. You will get a return, pun intended, on the time that you put in to reverse logistics. We all as consumers have had crappy return experiences and we've had good ones. And you usually remember and go back to the companies that treat you well when you need that service. Zappos, I highlighted here. They are a shoe company, sure, but really they're a customer service company. And what made them able to buy City Hall there in downtown was not that they sold shoes, it was that they cared about customers. They cared about customer service and returns and retaining those users, which over time improves your customer lifetime value. And that brings me to point two, which is that you should measure how much you get out of customers versus how much it costs you to acquire them. And we could do a whole session on just these two metrics alone. But in essence, the ratio of this will determine whether your business succeeds or fails. Because if you're getting less out of a customer than it costs you to acquire them, you don't really have a successful business. Whereas if you're getting 5 times it, then your business is booming. And those customer acquisition costs can be marketing, it can be the time that you're spending with customers, anything that's getting those customers in the door. And then COV is how much am I getting out of them over time? So retaining customers through great service, through a great product, through high quality, improves repeat sales, which drives performance over time. So enable the virtuous cycle. Customer relationships, meaning you're better feedback from them, you have a better understanding of what the market needs, and that's going to allow you to plan and make better. When we think about this whole chain of plan, source, make, fulfill, retain, all of it is designed to create value for customers, right? So the more that you're interacting with them and the more you can inject that into your planning, forecasting, making, the more successful that you're going to be. So to wrap up, first, again, why should we care? Faster, cheaper, simpler. It is the core of every business and it's key to financial success. Less cost of goods sold, more cash, right? We all want more cash. Working capital efficiency. You're not tying up all your cash in inventory. You're doing more with what you, or you're doing more with less, ideally. Every business has a supply chain. Hopefully this has shown you that whether you're a consumer good company, you're a software company, services company, you have these different steps in your business, whether you realize it or not. And the quicker that you can start thinking in this way, the quicker you can get to good supply chain management, which is good business management. So have a forecast, even if it's just a guess to start, or a 3-month rolling average, 3-month rolling average with some adjustments. Have an idea of what you're going to sell and then track what you sell. Continuously plan. Don't just think that what I sold last month is always going to be the case. Don't let your demand forecasts get stale. Stay on top of it and plan proactively. In sourcing, think long term. Don't just try to squeeze the lemon, right? Be the river. Think of it as an ecosystem. Think about scalability, reliability. When you create value at each step. Don't just do stuff in your creation process because that's what you've always thought of. Really take a lens of, does this create customer value and how? For fulfillment, know what you have in days. Again, it'll leapfrog your supply chain planning if you just divide your inventory by your demand days. So think in those terms and set your reorder point equal to lead time. And then service, or often called retain, maximize customer lifetime value. Keep customers, keep winning that business, and don't be afraid to invest in that step. So that's all I got. Feel free to reach out to me on email or LinkedIn. Happy to chat. As I mentioned, I'm passionate about this program and about the ecosystem, so I'm around. And hopefully we have some time. Yeah, a little bit of time left here for questions as well.
So David, let me ask a general question.
Yeah.
How does one go about finding all the vendors that can supply your component parts?
Good question. So I would recommend using some online AI tools. Even in my day job, we use ChatGPT or Perplexity to answer questions like that. It's easier than ever to go out and do that, and it'll list them out for you. And then I would recommend starting with a long list and whittling them down. Be stringent with your criteria and what you're looking for, and put in the time up front to build relationships with the suppliers that matter rather than just the first one that you Google.
And in a lot of cases, if people are making just small quantities to start with because they don't have a lot of money to invest in inventory, how do they go about trying to determine what the breakpoints are for larger orders? Because they don't want to feel like they're being taken advantage of, but if they don't know to ask that question.
Yeah, so a lot of suppliers are going to have a minimum order quantity, and it's something to ask about as you're vetting those suppliers. Think about how you can creatively do test batches. So maybe that's depending on what you're doing, you're maybe buying supplies from a grocery store and kitting them up yourself, or you're asking for samples from suppliers. But key in this process is maintaining a relatively short list of SKUs that you're offering. So if you're just starting a business and maybe you're going to a farmer's market or you're just starting out trying to find customers, I wouldn't recommend starting with a list of 50 different types of things that you're trying to sell. Maybe start with 5, see what goes well, talk to customers about what they would want. At the end of the day, customer feedback is really key in refining the product offering. And then figuring out suppliers that can help you with that quick initial batch. And those suppliers hopefully are going to be the ones that understand that you want to grow the business long term. Generally speaking, and this sounds like a truism, make the big order when you have the customer demand. And sometimes you have to guess, sometimes it's a leap of faith, but you want to have some reasonable certainty that there are orders out there. So one great way is to do pre-orders. And a lot of businesses start by taking orders from customers that are to be fulfilled once there's a critical mass. And that can be a nice shortcut to get around that MOQ issue.
Questions in the room?
Nope, no questions in the, oh, we have a question. Hold please.
Okay. And I see we have one online too, so we'll ask John to unmute when we call on him.
When he was talking about,
Oh, hold the mic closer.
Here, hang on to it.
when he was talking about creating forecasts, and he talked about monthly through A15, and the 15 went all the way down. And then I guess it was like your actual sale, 10, 20, and 4. So he looked at what he would have in his already pre-order, and then like, is the actual sale is what you had, and then you said you did that for a period of 3 months.
Yeah, so the actual sales are going to be what you actually sell. And this diagram can be a little confusing because you're doing in time speak, you're actually doing your month 3 forecast in month 2 because you're going to need to plan out what you're going to sell. That allows you to go and get the materials for it and then bring it to market. But you should be forecasting like a month in advance of when you're actually getting those actuals in.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make, yeah.
Okay, John?
Anybody else in the room? Oh, sorry, Megan.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we do.
Do you feel comfortable speaking about some of this as it relates to a SaaS product, like freemium SaaS product?
Yeah. What aspect of it?
Well, I want to specifically go back to the customer feedback.
Yeah.
So when you're working with a freemium product, you have customers who are paying, you have customers who are not. If you get feedback from the customers who are not paying about wanting features that are behind a paywall, should you interpret that to mean that those features should remain behind the paywall or that you should loosen your paywall?
Great question. And my SaaS startup had a freemium model for a while. And first thing I'll say is that the best feedback that you're going to get from a customer in that situation is converting to paid. And knowing what people are actually going to pay for is a critical step for understanding what people actually want. If you're getting customers that are reaching out to you, asking for specific features, don't be afraid to ask them if they would be willing to pay for this feature. Try to notice patterns in them. Try to find where you're getting critical mass of customers asking about those features again and again. Often you're going to have one-off type concerns where a specific customer wants a specific feature, and you don't always want to just cater to that one customer, right? See if there are other customers that want it. We had a product that was a geospatial data management tool, so pretty niche, but we had a free tier where you could access certain satellite imagery and then a paid tier where you could access other satellite imagery. And we would get people all the time asking for us to add these expensive data sets to the paid tier, but really they wanted to get it for free. And a lot of the freemium users out there are going to be just extracting value from you, and figuring out where you loosen or tighten that paywall hopefully comes down to frequent and frequent observations from customers, getting input from many customers more often, and then making that paywall decision around the patterns that you're seeing rather than one-offs. Hopefully that helps. Happy to talk more.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay, anyone else online? Leslie has advice for John, which is to focus on high quality paying paying customers.
Yeah, I would agree with Leslie on that. We, at my startup, we eventually discontinued the freemium model because it just got to be so much work for no money. And as I said, converting is the best signal that they'll give you.
How long did that take?
6 months, maybe more.
Mm.
Yeah, painful.
Painful, exactly.
Yeah,
Well,
it's nice to
you're an
see
entrepreneur.
users.
You have to expect pain.
It's nice to see users, and it's helpful to talk to investors about user growth over time. But when you're building a business, ultimately, revenue is what you need.
That's why my mantra is traction is sales. Everything else
Yeah.
is just information.
Exactly.
We have one more question in the room.
I had a question. You were talking about sourcing earlier and like minimum order quantities. I just got my samples Friday, unexpectedly early. Great.
Cool.
Better than I thought they would even be. Like amazing, actually. So excited. Got the branding team here locally, got that done. My question is, when I did the order from one of the factories, I actually did the order because they said minimum order quantity 2, and we were having some language barrier issues. And I was like, sure, 2, yeah, whatever. Just give me, so I didn't even do the sample. I guess my question is, how pushy should you be with trying to get the price down 50 cents, $1, or should I just kind of order 50, whatever they say, with same price as I did before? Or I guess like how pushy should you be in the beginning with like haggling?
Yeah, I would say don't lose the relationship over 50 cents because ultimately you're more likely to get the discount on the 50 order or the 500 order if you're developing a good relationship from the start.
Gotcha. That's what I thought.
So,
It's always good to hear somebody say it.
yeah, don't just try to squeeze the lemons. This is something that often becomes like a test for people as they're building a business. They feel like, oh, I can really bully the supplier. But they do this day in and day out. And the more professional that you can be up front, and then as you start to grow, you say, hey, we're trying to hit this goal. Would you help us get there? I think the more likely you're to find success.
Maggie, we have one more question.
Go for it. Well, Tiffany has a question too, so you may have.
Hi, this is Sadi again. At what point should I ask people to sign an NDA? Like you, sir, for example, Mr. David, I'm comfortable sharing my idea with you, but because you're part of like the Startup NV family, at what point would it be offensive? And at what point is it just unintelligent to not have people sign an NDA before I send them my pitch deck?
What information are you trying to protect?
The
At a
idea
high
of the
level.
business, it's my intellectual property.
Are there trade secrets or the basis of something patentable? Or is it just what you've developed and your business plan and where you plan to go?
Yes, it's knowledge that I've built up over 25 years in the music industry. And so plenty of other people have pieces of the knowledge, but I'm the only one with my knowledge.
Yeah. So I've signed a lot of NDAs. I've used NDAs in the past. A lot of investors will refuse to sign your NDA. A lot of other entrepreneurs that you work with will probably refuse to sign your NDA. At some point, you're going to have to start talking to the business about it, or talking to people about the business if you want to grow it. And so my suggestion would be to, rather than trying to get everyone to sign an NDA, figure out how to talk about the business in terms that don't give away your secret sauce, and figure out how to reframe the conversation in a way that you're not disclosing the stuff that you're most worried about. I'm a big believer that ideas are a dime a dozen and execution is what matters. And I'm not trying to be harsh there, but I think you're going to succeed because you've been in the business for 25 years and you know how to actually bring the idea to life. It's hard to believe that just because because you talk to somebody at a bar or incubator session or whatever, that they're going to go and execute your idea before you. I think getting into the market and actually doing it is what's going to create your moat. And in the meantime, think about how can I be more general in what I talk about. So rather than getting into, I'm reinventing the structure of music and rewriting math because of XYZ, and this is something I could build a patent around. Don't talk about that. Say, I'm creating a music business. Here are the things, and get deeper with people as you see value in that. And often the people that you either will come to trust and feel free to share with will be the ones that are most likely to sign the NDA anyway. So don't just, I would say just don't give it all away up front and use that to protect yourself versus trying to have every single person sign an NDA. Because again, investors aren't going to do it. A lot of people aren't going to do it. And at the end of the day, you may be a fairly litigious person and want to go after people, but lawyers are expensive and so on. So think about the way that you're framing the conversation rather than, am I getting legal protection up front?
She said thank
Tiffany.
you.
Tiffany has a question online.
Hello.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, my question is just with respect to knowing how much inventory that you have on hand. Are you making that prediction based off of the planning portion or on like the actual sales that you make over like a 3-month period? I wasn't sure how that.
Could you repeat your question?
Yeah. So my question is about, there was a mention about knowing how much inventory you had on hand
Yeah.
per day.
Yeah.
And so my question is, is that based off of sales or is that based off like the estimate that you would do during the planning?
Great question, Tiffany. It is
Okay.
based on sales. So this
Okay.
demand per day is just like your average daily demand. So how many did you sell in a month divided by 30?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, with regard to non-disclosures, investors will not sign a non-disclosure for the first time they're hearing your pitch because it makes it so that they can't build their base of knowledge of all the pitches that they've heard, which are a lot, to make comparisons with what you're offering, right? So somehow they have to compartmentalize in their brain that your particular product has this, and they can't add it to their body of knowledge when they're talking with founders about their pitches. And so they just won't do it. When you get in due diligence with an investor and you're getting into the weeds of your product, you're getting into the real IP of your product, then they're pretty far down the road. They will sign an NDA, but not for a first pitch, not to hear a pitch.
And I think that gets to the point of have a general version of what you share. And somebody put in the chat, when you're working with developers, like maybe have them sign NDA. I think that can make sense if they're going to really get into the weeds of the kind of trade secret level stuff. But differentiate that from the incubator pitch, where there's a lot of people in the room and less on the line.
Okay, well, David, thank you so much for all of your information. Let's see, John has added another comment here. I think it can show professionalism depending on the context and who it is. For example, I've shown large amounts of code to other developers, and I usually send over something very light. Keep the vibe, no pressure. I trust you. Just want you to know I'm serious. And he's never been turned down. That's good. That sounds reasonable. In general, what David said, execution is everything. Ideas are a dime a dozen, and they're probably not even worth a dime, even with inflation, because it's the ability to stick to the idea and work through it and create a business around it. That's harder to do than to come up with ideas. How many times did I say during our classes, if the customers are not interested, move on to your next idea. Your idea people, you'll come up with something new. But if you have the chutzpah and the drive to be an entrepreneur, you'll be able to be successful with an idea when you find that people want it. Then you should put your passion into it. Okay, so more thanks from Daniel Cabrera. So, all right. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us tonight. As always, it's been great. You make a complex issue understandable, but then it's still a tough thing to execute on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll just reiterate that this is something that many large organizations do poorly. I've had quite a few clients over the years that you would recognize by name that don't do a lot of these basic steps very well. So just get some kind of supply chain management in place. For the scale of business that you're working on now, it doesn't have to be complex, but getting a forecast in place, knowing what you're doing in terms of processes, manage what you measure, and focus on customer service builds a really solid backbone for business success.
Thanks again. Okay, David, let's see. We have one announcement from Andrew about the pitch decks. Go ahead and come on and tell us all about them.
One sec. I'm trying to put them up. All right. Now let me share. Sorry, guys. Bear with me. I put the info in the chat. I don't need to share my screen. I'm having technical issues. But yes, please send me your pitch decks for demo day by 5 p.m. Everyone who has sent me for feedback, I blocked out some time tomorrow to respond. And yeah, I also put some info in Disco, and I'll be sending you guys a email as well, just as a reminder.
It was 5 p.m. Thursday.
On Thursday, please.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks. We'll see you Thursday for pitch practice. And you don't have to come in person. You can do it online. So there will be mentors here and they'll be giving feedback, but it will not be a typical mentor session. It will be pitch practice with mentor feedback.
Thank you, David.
Thanks,
everyone.
David. Great
Hope you did a
job.
great job.